talk a little bit about what makes a successful demand generation strategy. So I'm Kenda Macdonald and I'm the demand gen practice lead at MarketingProfs. And I've seen hundreds of demand generation strategies both succeed and fail over the 10 years that I've been working in demand generation. And one of the things that is very, very clear is that demand generation needs to come back to its foundations. So when we take a look at demand generation, people tend to think, the definition of that's got to do with marketing automation. It's got to do with, social media. It's got to do with this, it's got to do with that. And we bring in a lot of various different variables. And ultimately that causes a lot of demand generation strategies to fail because they lack cohesiveness and they lack focus. So coming back to the definition of demand generation, it's really all the activities that you are doing to get a lead interested, to capture their details, to nurture and engage them, to convert them through to a customer, and then to retain them as a customer for the long term. That is what demand generation is. It's all the activities that you do to make that happen. And when you take a look at demand generation from that perspective, you notice that the life cycle of which you are working with that lead over that period of time is quite long. It's not just about creating inbound content or advertising or outreach. It's not just about getting a lead in and getting them marketing qualified and through to sales qualified and handing them off to sales. It's about that whole cycle. It's about getting a lead that you know is a good quality lead and is going to convert and making sure that lead does convert and sticks around for a customer for longer. It's about customer lifetime value. So good quality demand generation strategy relies on all the things that are going to make all of that happen. Not just interest in the beginning and not just getting something ready for sales qualified. So for something to really succeed and to do all of those things, you've got quite a few component parts that you have to have in place to make it work. First and foremost, you have to understand your audience. You have to understand what they're interested in. What content are they looking for? What's helpful at each and every stage along their cycle before they go through to conversion. And you need to be able to provide that content very strategically. And in order to provide that content strategically, you need to have marketing automation that backs you up and helps you nurture and convert those leads through. On top of that, you need to make sure that marketing automation is very strategically laid out. It has a backbone or strategy underneath it so that you're cascading people from one campaign to the next campaign to the next campaign, and you're getting somebody ready for conversion. And that conversion cycle over there is what we generally refer to as the automation journey, making sure that you have all the appropriate campaigns in place to get that conversion through. And underpinning all of that, you need to understand that consumer's behavior so that you can be clear on what content they need, where the automation is going to be most helpful, and how you're going to get those leads to convert. So when you're looking at your demand generation strategy in that way, really you're needing some quite severe component parts. You're needing a hell of a content plan that needs to have behavioral elements in it. You need to make sure that your marketing automation and your automation journey is very strategically planned out. A digital customer journey is a component part of that. And of course, it all needs to be working in the same direction and pushing towards that conversion. And unfortunately, most businesses don't have that in place. They have instead random acts of content. And a random act of content is when you have a team that is working really, really hard to create tons of great content that they're just pushing out with the hopes that some of it's going to stick. And the biggest problem that we have in marketing now is that there are so many demands on our time. And there are so many things that we have to be able to do. And all these random acts of content that we put out there to try and get something to stick means that we're not strategically focusing on the things that we should be doing that are actually going to get us the conversion. So a demand generation strategy that succeeds is not only one that covers all those component areas of the strategy and the content and the behavior and adapts to how the consumer is moving through the process, but it's also one that is very, very focused, where you're picking off the most important component parts and all of the peripheral content activities are keying into those core parts and making sure that they're succeeding. So stop the random acts of content and focus instead on creating something very, very strategic with your demand generation journey. So remember, 3 component parts: the behavior, the content, and the strategic backbone. And that is what makes a demand generation strategy succeed.